Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Priesthood Dispatches channel. Where have you been? Well, you're in the right place now. The date is the 28th of January, 2022, and this is episode 14 of the After Dinner Chat series. As always, please like and subscribe, leave any messages below, and for those that feel they can, share the podcast with your friends, and if you want to leave a tip, you can find the link in the description below. Okay. So this week, our guest, let me bring him in here to see if we can get this right. This week, our guest, Bruce Holt. Congratulations, Bruce. A round of applause there. Or some of you may know him from TikTok as Holy Apostate, and we're going to see some of his TikToks later. But Bruce's kind of one-line claim to fame is that he was excommunicated for a single Facebook post. Now, I have posted, this is probably the longest Facebook post you've ever met, all these videos and everything, and not a peep. But Bruce must have been, I don't know if you got like some massive reach or something, but the church was really scared of your Facebook post. But we'll get there. Welcome, Bruce.
Yeah. Thank you. It's good to be here.
Awesome. Where are you coming to us from?
Northern Colorado.
Northern Colorado. And
in the good old US of A in the Rocky Mountains.
You say that like it's a good thing, the good old US of A. We've...
Yeah, well, definitely opinions may vary globally, and I've heard many opinions, so that's fine.
Yeah. Well, you're there so that we can feel good about ourselves, or at least when Trump was there, we could. Now,
yeah.
But we enjoy. We've got Boris, he
and you're welcome to him.
Yeah. Well, someone said something to him this week about some accusation. It's all parties, lockdown parties, and he replied to an accusation by saying it is total rhubarb. And that's what I love about the British political system, that mudslinging comes to obscure British words and how you can use them. Who can be the most pompous yellow-bellied whiff-waff? No. Alana saying hi. Hello, Alana. She's all the way in Scotland. So we are across the globe. Okay. So Bruce's story begins. If any of you are a fan of Bruce on TikTok, and you can see the link to his TikTok below, you'll know all this already, because he's done an awesome job in putting together his story in short little tidbits. But we're gonna pick out some of those tidbits. So
the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah, I'm thinking of getting like a board with guest names on it, because to kind of wear as a badge of honor, because we've had Margaret Toscano with history all the way, genealogy all the way back to the pioneers. We've had Beth and Beaver, who her great grandfather was Heber C. Kimball. And now we've got yourself, a 6th generation Mormon. Is that on both sides?
Yeah, I think so. My third great grandfather was James Holt, and he converted in Johnson County, Illinois, and moved up to Nauvoo. That's on my Holt line back. On my mom's side, we kind of switch back and forth through the, spouses, husband, wife, husband, back up to Oliver Boardman Huntington. He of Lunar Inhabitants fame.
Wow. Lunar
So
inhabitants fame.
he's a third great grandfather back up my tree.
Awesome. Well, I think it's great because my I'm a second generation Mormon, pretty much on both sides, and yeah, in fact though, my dad, he's a big genealogy fan, and he'll come to me every now and then, and he's come to me and said, "We've got Julius Caesar." Then he came to me and said, "We've got Pocahontas." And now his claim to fame is he's found some way that somewhere one of our ancestors left Liverpool to go to the New World and is somehow related to Lucy Mack Smith. Now, if you were to draw this out on a spider diagram, I'm assuming there'd be about 100,000 little connections he's had to go through on Ancestry.com to do that. But yeah, Joseph Smith right here. Boom.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Through Lucy Mack Smith as well. And interestingly enough, one of my best friends, my best friend in high school was, his surname was Mack. So I told him at one point that we were probably related.
We're probably cousins. That is what it
Yeah.
is. We'll go on Ancestry now and make that connection, and it will be about as truthful as a lot of other things that you find on Ancestry.com.
Yeah. According to that, I'm probably related to most of the current Q15.
Yeah. Well, I once clicked back all the way up, bored TBM as I was, and was really impressed that once you get to the Bible, it all just kind of auto-populates back to Adam and Eve. And you're like, wow, in an actual pedigree chart, Adam and Eve. Would you Adam and Eve it? Okay.
Yeah, black and white doesn't always reflect reality.
Yeah. So a big part of your story, and for anyone who again wants to read Bruce's story, you can go to mormonthinker.com, and Bruce's story is featured there. The link to that is as well down in the description below. As we Priesthood Dispatches, we like to give you all the reference material. So your story, as a child, one of 9.
No, I'm the oldest of 6. My mom is the oldest of 9. Yeah.
There we go. So you were the oldest of 6. I'm second youngest of 6, so I can relate to how crazy the house would have been. And the interesting thing about you was that you were not, as you call it, a bick. You were not born in the covenant.
Correct. The rest of my siblings were. Reason that story is the way it is because my father, now we should have a straight line from James Holt, my third great grandfather that lived in Nauvoo, came across the plains pushing a handcart, took him 10 years. But there should be a straight line of members to me. And there are, but my grandfather, my dad's dad, went inactive. My father was not raised in the church.
Okay.
In his own biography that he wrote, he says that he became a Mormon by osmosis. Well, he grew up in Springville, Utah. And, that's part of Utah County. It's near Provo, Utah, where BYU is. It's high Mormon population. So the kids that he went to school with were all Mormons. And he ended up being invited to primary and then as a young man to MIA and things like that, So he grew up around them. And in high school, he decided he would join. So he was baptized. And it was my mother's father who baptized him. They were kind of high school sweethearts later on in their high school career, probably junior, senior years, last 2 years. And so it was my mom's dad who baptized my father. And so that reconnected the links back into the church.
Oh, and then someone will have said that was the spirit working,
It was common sense not working.
No, absolutely. Okay. So, at what point were you then sealed to your parents? Because if you were the one that wasn't born in the covenant and the other five were, was there a moment where you and where you all went to the temple?
Uh, it would have been when I was less than a year old. I
Okay.
was born. My parents I think, were married civilly in May 1954. I was supposed to be born in February of 1955, but in November of 1954, my mom slipped on some stairs, November 14th, and I was born November 15th.
Okay.
So I was a preemie. I was very, very small. I spent my first couple of weeks in an incubator, and there was a question as to whether I would survive or not. Well, apparently that question has been answered and has been the answer for 67 years.
Yeah.
But in September of 1955, my parents went to the temple and had their endowments, and then I was sealed to them at that time. The rest of my siblings were all born in the covenant.
Okay. Awesome. And I guess your upbringing in church, other than that, was pretty much, as I like to call it, the cookie cutter Mormon upbringing. You served a mission. Randomly enough, your mission was Spanish speaking to
Yeah,
Australia.
in Sydney, yes.
Were there a lot of Spanish speaking people in Sydney at the time?
There were enough that I think ultimately, and I don't know for sure, but I think ultimately there were 5 branches that were created that were Spanish speaking branches.
Okay.
I know of one specifically, and that was attached to it was a dependent branch to the South Harbor Ward in Eastlake, Mascot area, on the South Harbor side of Sydney. And yeah, there were plenty of Spanish speaking people to teach. Although we spent most of our time knocking on doors to find them.
Yeah, don't
So,
you know it? Um,
oh, and
yeah,
my mission president was Earl C. Tingey, if anybody knows that name.
it's not myself.
He was
Um,
one of the 7 presidents of 70 for a while.
okay.
Um, he's emeritus status now.
Did you
He's
like
still
him?
living. Oh yeah, great man.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
I think if my mission president was called as anything again, I'd yeah, that'd just be awful. The guy was we weren't friends, let's be honest. But we're not here to talk about me. So you served your
Well,
mission.
and I left for my mission from Bountiful, Utah, but came back to Centerville, Utah, which is the town just north of Bountiful, Utah.
Okay.
And Earl Tingey was raised in Centerville, so he had family there.
Okay. We'll just haul Doug Vincent over the coals slightly. He's late. Doug, you've missed the lottery numbers for tomorrow night, and we won't be repeating them. So you missed out. And just a quick shout out to Alana, who this week is moderating the chat in case we get any bots again like last week taking over. They absolutely destroyed us. They just came in and just filled the chat with all sorts of crap.
Well,
So
thank you, Alana.
yeah, Alana's there to boss them around. So came back off your mission, and you
Hmm.
did. Where did you return to geographically?
I returned to Centerville, Utah,
Ah,
north of Salt Lake City.
that would explain why you got married in 4 months.
Yeah, well, I returned in April and was married in August.
Did you know your wife before, or did you meet her when you got back off your mission?
Yeah, I had met her before, and we wrote to each other while I was out there. But it wasn't that she was waiting for me. She even spent 4 months at BYU Hawaii and had a good time. So,
Oh wow. Okay. Well, I got you beat because I got married 8 weeks after I got back off my mission, and
mm,
yeah, here in the UK. So, but you would, I think for myself, I'm still with my wife, but I think we'd been together maybe 5 years by that time. Um, the bot has arrived. We've been together 5 years or so. So we knew each other quite well, and the gospel wasn't all that we were based on. Um, and I understand for yourself, it didn't go amazingly well.
no, um, no. She was very pleasant, and we had a great time dating and so on, and so she seemed like just the perfect gal. She was tall. Um, I am, or have been, now that I'm 67, I'm about this much shorter than I used to be, but I used to be 6 feet tall even, and she was about five, almost 5'10", so fairly tall, and attractive, and seemed to have everything going for her. After we got married, even while we were still on our honeymoon, I started seeing evidences of some what I would call control freak characteristics. That's what I would have termed them way back then. Control freak characteristics. Nowadays, they diagnose her probably with some narcissistic tendencies. I had two therapists later on tell me that she was probably narcissistic in many ways, but because she wouldn't come in and participate in therapy with me, they could not provide a proper diagnosis.
Yeah, and
But in
it's
their interactions with her, in trying to get her to come in and talk about me and that, they both of them determined that she had some narcissistic tendencies at the very
yeah.
least.
Okay. Well, we don't need to dwell on her because this is about you and this is supposed to be fun. But I thought it's some good context. And Doug, whoever you knew who got married on their way home from their mission, are they still together? And what was the? I mean, did he just meet her? Was he passing through Las Vegas? We need more information on that one. But
Yeah,
you,
that'd be fascinating.
yeah, like how does that even happen?
Yeah,
Um, because you've definitely. I remember seeing my wife for the first time after my mission. She'd waited 2 years, and I'd got missionary goggles on. She was the most beautiful girl I'd ever seen, but every girl at that point was the most beautiful girl I'd ever seen. You know what I mean? So
isn't it amazing how that happens?
yeah, you really will settle for you know less than usual.
Well, and conversely, apparently they settled for me because I mean, look at this mug. What, would you ever marry that?
I plead the
Not you
fifth.
personally.
I plead the fifth. Well, someone did twice, so
I know, I know, I know, and I even had a relationship between the marriages. So
yeah. Well, it's that relationship that led to your first excommunication. That's right,
that's
people.
correct because we lived together without the benefit of marriage.
That's right. Bruce is the ultimate overachiever. Feel like that
Yes, if
needs
I
to.
can't get excommunicated one way, I'll try another.
Yeah, but you know what? It's. I've got a friend who was excommunicated and then rebaptized and has now left the church, and wants to have his records removed. And I talked to him and I'm like, all the crap you had to go through getting excommunicated the first time, all of the shit that they dragged you through
Yeah,
and the pain of repentance,
yeah,
you know,
hmm
the because when you're in it, it is almost a physical pain. I've been through the repentance process, and I'm sure being excommunicated as a TBM is just unbearable.
It's marvelous for family relationships.
I'm sure it went very well, you know. The black sheep.
Yeah, yeah,
But you did get rebaptized
I did.
in 91 and
I
married
did.
your second wife, and you're still together now and going
Over
good.
30 years.
Congratulations. I feel like
Yeah, thank you.
what have we got for you? We've got something. There you go. I've paid for the little box, so I'm going to use it, guys.
Yeah, there you go. I appreciate it.
Oh dear. Oh, Doug has let us know. Okay, so yeah, he had a picture made of his fiance. Oh, a picture made, and his fiance did the same. A photographer photoshopped him in, and they had announcements made. Then got married in the SLC on his way home. Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
that's a story you need to get a hold of, I think.
Yeah. Doug, if you know this person, like I don't care if where they are on their journey, I need to speak to them. Wow.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That'd be a great one. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, only in Utah. Only in Utah. Okay.
yeah.
So you've been rebaptized, but
Yep.
then it
I
takes.
got rebaptized in August and was married in September.
So your current wife was TBM at the time,
Yes.
and how's that now?
She is still TBM. Yeah, so I'm in a mixed faith marriage. But
Fantastic.
after I was excommunicated, she said that if anybody gives you any trouble for regarding this, just send them to me and I'll set them straight.
You know, that's fantastic because
So
so
she's
many.
got my back.
Yeah. No. Awesome. But what happens next makes you famous in another way that I don't think many of us can claim, and that is you became the topic of a general conference talk. And
Yeah,
this is the first time I've been able to handle in the flesh actual proof of a general conference talk, because usually they give these talks about nameless, faceless people, and you can never actually check what happened. You know, when Russell M. Nelson says that he, I don't know, skateboarded down the half pipe and got to the deacon on the other side who wasn't coming to church and, you know, impressed him with his moves. You can't really find that deacon, but we have you
yeah,
here in the flesh.
yeah. Well,
So, but
as best I know, because I do have to offer a caveat that the story he told, he did not name me by name, and he never contacted me. He never got permission from me or anything like that. But I got called by my mother and other relatives saying, Elder Anderson just talked about you. He told your story.
and
And I was thinking the same thing as he was talking because it fit. He was truthful in that story. He didn't exaggerate. He didn't change anything. He gave the salient details, and they matched exactly to my own
well,
experience. He's the one
we're
who actually restored my blessings before he was an apostle. He was an
yeah.
area president.
So it was Neil L. Anderson, and it was 10 years between you being rebaptized and having your priesthood blessings restored. So
Yeah, that talk was about 8 years, actually. Yeah, and he gave
okay.
that in October conference, the Saturday afternoon session in 2009.
Well, let's welcome Elder Anderson, and let's listen to what he's got to say.
All right.
Years ago, I was asked to meet with a man who, long before our visit, had a period of riotous living. As a result of his bad choices, he lost his membership in the church. He had long since returned to the church and was faithfully keeping the commandments, but his previous actions haunted him. Meeting with him, I felt his shame and his deep remorse at having set his covenants aside. Following our interview, I placed my hands upon his head to give him a priesthood blessing. Before speaking a word, I felt an overpowering sense of the Savior's love and forgiveness for him. Following the blessing, we embraced, and the man wept openly.
Wow.
That's exactly how it happened. That is exactly how it happened.
Perfect. So I think that's pretty good proof right there.
That was at
Riotous
a
living.
stake conference in Pueblo, Colorado. I was in a Denver stake at the time, and my stake president called me and said, "Man, you've been working a long time to get back in, have your temple temple blessings restored. We have a stake conference in Pueblo, and we've got the guy who wants to do it for you. Can you go?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And down I went. After being married to my wife, of course, there's more to the backstory of that and why I ended up going back to church. Because I had been excommunicated for adultery, it wasn't over doctrinal concerns or church history or things like that. I still had those beliefs, but my 12-year marriage to a semi-narcissist, control freak, whatever you want to call her, tore me down so much that I was so depressed and so distraught and torn up that I did not care about anyone or anything, least of all myself. And so in that emotional state, I attempted a suicide, admittedly half-heartedly, because I still love living, and it of course did not go to completion, but the attempt was made. And so in that state of mind, it took me a long time to rebuild and overcome all the damage, all the trauma that I had undergone in that 12-year marriage. So that first excommunication, I worked hard to try and get back into the church. The baptism was easy. That was the easy part. I met all the requirements required to get back into the church, but it took 8 more years afterwards, and actually was 10 years after my excommunication before I had my priesthood blessings restored. And there was a 70 that I saw, an elder. Oh, I should remember his name. Oh, Elder Fowler that I spoke with. He was a 70 in the 90s at some point. And he was just a hard ass. My wife almost, I think she would have left the church over that meeting with him, because he didn't want to listen to me. His mind was made up. He was judgmental. There was absolutely nothing I could have done, said, to get me back in the church or to get my priesthood blessings restored. And so I had to wait several more years, probably another half decade or so. And then in working with my bishops and stake presidents after that, ultimately in 2000, actually my priesthood blessings were restored in 2001. So it wasn't 9 years or 8 years. They were restored in 2001.
Okay.
Well, let's see, 1989 to 99. So it was a dozen years, I guess, after my excommunication that I was finally.
Okay. Before we move on,
I'm trying to do math in my head, and I'm an old guy, so you got to pardon that.
It's fine. Before we move on, just for around, obviously, we just mentioned suicide, and I'm sorry that you had to go through that. For anyone that might be struggling, I've just popped a link in the chat for the Samaritans, where you can find more help. But everyone speak, we can hold each other up. Okay.
And I thank those who are commiserating with me and telling me that that was rough, or they know how I felt.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. That's a sad and regretful and depressing part of my life, and I'm glad it's well behind me now. So
Yeah.
I'm not worried about that anymore.
So my question would be, when it says had your priesthood blessings restored, what does that consist of? What blessings have you lost? Obviously, you lost everything being excommunicated, but you were rebaptized and were reconfirmed a member of the church. So is that all that you have? Are you?
Yes, yes, that's it. When Elder Nielsen called me down to Pueblo, and we sat in a room, some classroom off to the side somewhere. I guess he had spoken at that conference, so there wasn't anybody around. It was just he and my wife and I. We talked for a bit. He kind of very quietly and sincerely interviewed me, and then he put his hands on my head, just like he said, and gave me a blessing, just like any other priesthood blessing. There was nothing formal or memorized or anything like that that I know of. He in the blessing he told me that all of my blessings of the temple were restored.
Okay.
All of my blessings, all of my sealings, all of my ordinations, all of that was all restored. So it was as if I had not been excommunicated. And I was back to that point just before excommunication.
But the Mormon church never forgets. They're like an elephant in that respect.
Yeah, well, I think I carried an annotation on my
yeah,
membership record.
yeah, and that's the sad thing
An
because
asterisk up there saying,
yeah,
beware this guy.
yeah, they'll quote all of the pardon me, repentance, makes as white as snow, like whatever it was. But yeah, no, that annotation stays. They will know what you've done, even
Yeah.
if you've repented of it. Even if Jesus has forgotten, the church does not. So, what can you do? So you,
Jesus, who's he?
Jesus. Well, in my last
Yeah,
interview with Matthew
the
Gill,
church doesn't focus on Jesus. They don't focus on Jesus. So yeah,
what do you mean? It's in the name, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
that's about as far as it goes.
Yeah. Oh no, no. And in the name of Jesus Christ, Amen.
Oh, yeah.
You
Okay.
got to remember that. How many fast and testimony meetings did you go to where it's just the only mention was in the name of Jesus Christ, Amen?
Oh, innumerable.
Yeah. It was always Joseph, or if it wasn't Joseph, it was. Oh, I saw a roller skating duck this week, and it really made me feel the spirit. It's so true. Okay, so well, up until 2013, then you were attending church. You were first assistant in the high priest group. You'd been gospel doctrine teacher, and I think
I'd been
gospel.
in the elders quorum presidency prior, and I mean, my career has been like anybody else in the church. I've been in the Cub Scouts. I've been in the Boy Scouts. I've been in the elders quorum. I've been in the high priest. Once I was made once I grew old and mature, I became a high priest. And so yeah, in 2013, I was the first assistant to the high priest group leader.
Okay,
My
and
responsibility was over group instruction.
and that's where it went wrong
Yeah,
because the Sunday school course coming up that year was Doctrine, Covenants, and Church History.
Yes.
And Bruce works in IT, everyone. So if we've got an IT problem and you've already switched it off and switched it back on, and you still have the problem, contact Bruce.
Actually, I do work for a global software company right now, and in their tech support, but I was a developer for the product that I support for many years. And so I know the product in and out. Your other problems I might not be able to address as
Okay.
well. But,
Oh, Doug's an IT guy as well. So we should
good.
get a little club going.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a TV show in that. The IT guy. Yeah. So
Yeah, the course of study was Doctrine, Covenants, and Church History.
no, but what you did is you took it to a new level. Okay. There are so many times Bruce is the ultimate overachiever, not only getting excommunicated twice, but on this occasion, Bruce decided that he was on call for IT 24/7, 365 for a global company, which meant sometimes he was up at night. And what do you do when you work in IT? You read a lot because apparently IT is easy. So,
No.
but you undertook a reading project over the next 14 months that blew my mind. Just let me find the list because it's unreal. So,
And mind you, I did it all on this. This is my Kindle Fire that I was given for Christmas one year. So I had this with me at all times.
oh, technology, the downfall of us all. I'm being typically hard-headed here. So you read The History of the Church, all 7 volumes, The Comprehensive History of the Church, 6 volumes, The Journal of Discourses, 26 volumes. How did you get through that? The History of Joseph Smith by his mother, the Book of Mormon, Doctrine and Covenants, the Bible, the Pearl of Great Price, so all of the standard works, and several journals, diaries of your pioneer ancestors over 14 months. And that, my friends, was enough to destroy what had been a strong testimony.
Yeah.
So you speak in your story about correlations and things starting to coalesce and come together.
Yeah, well, as an IT guy, anytime you're trying to diagnose an issue, realizing that correlation is not always causation, you still have to investigate these correlations. And my mind just tends to work that way. I see correlations, and I'm able to see if there's an actual relationship or not. And so after reading through all of these things and having been brought up in the church, knowing what the church teaches, I saw that there was a ton of discord between what I read and what the church teaches.
Okay. Yeah. I can't believe that that's true, though. No, it is. It's, yeah. So your first shelf item,
My
go on.
very first shelf item, if I want to go back a while, was when I was 13. My family had moved from Salt Lake City to Birmingham, Alabama, the Deep South, in 1966, 2 years after the race riots. So it was an interesting time and an interesting place for a 13-year-old. I had always been interested in science and nature and things like that, and the Book of Abraham fascinated me because of the facsimiles. and the relationship between the text and the facsimiles. I mean, even in the text, it calls out the facsimiles, saying that these facsimiles are a means to understand these gods that he's talking about in the text itself. So the facsimiles cannot be separated from the text. And the facsimiles were all translated. They had their interpretations down below them. But in 1967, I think he was a professor, a history professor at the U of U, was researching at the New York Metropolitan Museum of Art and came across some papyri fragments that he recognized. He recognized them as being from the Book of Abraham. Part of the collection were the fragments and pieces of parchment, papyri that were the source of the Book of Abraham. And so the announcement was made in church that an upcoming issue of the Improvement Era, which was the predecessor to the Ensign, which was the predecessor to the Liahona, would carry, actually, the entire issue would be dedicated to Egypt and the find. And so I was looking forward to that, and it turned out that the issue in question was the January issue of the 1968 Improvement Era. And you can go back on archive.org and find that. The church stored a lot of their publications there in PDF format. So you can read that. You can get the whole issue and read it. And why, yes, the Journal of Discourses was the worst slog of a read I've ever had. That tested my endurance to its limits. It was. I would have to attribute the Journal of Discourses to my disaffection almost entirely.
Yeah, you couldn't deal
because
with.
I got the absolute flavor of the early leaders of the church, and they were elitist bastards, every single one.
Oh my gosh! So you're going for the
Anyway,
right?
going back to the Book of Abraham. Anyway, so I read that whole magazine and was sorely disappointed. I was thinking, now we're going to be able to vindicate Joseph Smith that he was a translator. And no, funeral texts? These are all funeral texts? Oh my gosh. I was so disappointed. And that was really the very first shelf item that I had as a young man. And that kind of played a part once I got back in through the history of the church, reading where Joseph would put a little annotation for a particular day, working with the papyrus, working with the fragments, working on the Egyptian alphabet, working on, he specified those things all along. And it was over the course of several months that he would do this. And you could see that reading the history of the church. And then, reading the essays, because the essays came out in 2012, and I found them going into the gospel topics section. I just happened across them. And what they wrote there did not jive with what I'd known my entire life. So that was my first shelf item.
I just want to pull out. So you've spoken on your TikTok about this, but you've pretty much told us what you told us on TikTok, so we won't play that right now. I just want to pull out something that you did say on your TikTok, and I think it's something that is overlooked by everyone when they talk about the Book of Abraham as a fact, because we get into the funerary text, we get into the facsimiles and how it's all BS. But Chandler, was it Michael Chandler?
Yes.
The guy who must have thought all of his dreams had come true when he met Joseph Smith and thought, oh my gosh, I am going to get some real money for these things that I've been trying to sell all across the eastern, United States. So he gives Joe a sample of the text. Joseph translates it, at which point Michael Chandler issues a certificate of authenticity to say that Joseph's translation was correct. Like, Joseph must have been so gullible at this point to then go and raise thousands of dollars from the saints, the poor saints, to buy these things. It is almost like it's like the people that sell land on the moon, and you get a certificate, you get a whole like lease of your 1 acre of land on the moon.
And you see the provenance of Quaker ownership, right?
Oh no, yeah, absolutely. That's definitely where we were going. But yeah, he must have thought all of his dreams have come true. So
Yeah, and that certificate is in the history of the church. If you want to go and look it up, I think it's in volume 6.
there you go. And there's something that I think that's what your encyclopedic knowledge helps to pull those things out, because I think they get lost in the bigger issues. These smaller, more interesting things, we lose them. But
Well, it's been several years since I actually read them, of course, but because I've now been out of the church. I was excommunicated in 2016, so it's been 6 years. Well, it'll be
well,
6 years in March, so that's a while back. And being an old man like I am, my memory is not as good as it used to be.
well,
So
it
it's
was
either volume 5 or 6 that certificate is in. I think it's volume 6.
okay. I will take a look after this, but I'm gonna take us through early July 2015. This is when in
Mhm.
your written story you start to discuss some of your unbelief with your wife, and then you speak to your bishop, who passes you on to the stake president. And it just so happens that there is a visiting area authority 70 coming to town. So bishop schedules for July 19th, 2015, a meeting, or the stake president schedules it, sorry, a meeting between yourself, the stake president, and Elder Brent J. Hillier, where you lay it all out for them. You say, this is how I was raised, this is what I was raised with. And their response was to simply bear their testimonies, with not a fact between them to rebut it. So that was nice of them. So
Yeah,
nothing.
wasn't it though?
Yeah, what do we expect anymore? Um, I guess it's just a thing of, well, if I can be okay with it and I still love Jesus, then I don't care what question you've got, you need to be okay with it as well.
The interesting thing to me was that uh, Elder Hillier was aware of some of the things that I was, that the stake president was not. Like that they had come across the seer stone, that chocolate covered seer stone, chocolate covered looking seer stone, um, that would be featured in an article in the Ensign in October. So it was under work at the time, in July. So it came out in the Ensign in October of 2015. But he was aware. My stake president was not aware. But what my stake president, his solution to everything was that I needed to follow the Spirit. And if I followed the Spirit, I would be 100% right. And if I disregarded the Spirit, I'd be 100% wrong. And I needed to choose, was I going to follow the Spirit or not? And that dichotomous black and white thinking just doesn't work. It's not real.
Especially when occasionally I've felt the spirit in places where the spirit shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Doing things
Well,
that
we know what the spirit is. I mean, many of us
yeah,
ex-Mormons have done some research into psychological topics and neuropsychological topics and cognitive science and things like that, which I have. And it it kind of brings things to light a little more clearly, that these are all things that go on in the mind.
yeah,
They're brain centered, and they're based on all kinds of things like your indoctrination, your biases, and all of that, all rolled together. And you feel things. We have human emotions.
yeah. It's what makes us human. You know, it's what
Yeah.
set. I guess. Yeah. Well, what would life be without them?
But
Easier.
we were taught by the organization that these feelings were the spirit, when they're just normal human emotions. And as a missionary, in the very first discussion, I taught that to investigators. You would ask, Senor Garcia, ¿cómo te sientes? And we'd ask him, how are you feeling?
Yeah.
This is the spirit testifying to you that these things are true. So it's what the church taught us. It's what we taught our investigators. It's nonsense.
Yeah. Well, I had a dodgy curry once, and I felt the spirit the next day all day. It was amazing. I was like, wow, I've been so good. The spirit's been with me all day.
Oh, no, that's funny. I like
Yeah.
that.
Okay. We try. Okay, so you have this meeting, and they basically knock you back to say you're not spiritual enough. Go and pray some more. Don't worry about the ins and outs of everything. It's not really important. Just pray.
Right.
And then Elder Hillier, a couple of months later, sends you a letter.
Well, just before that, I want to highlight one very interesting thing that I found hilarious. Elder Hillier was there for a stake youth fireside that was supposed to be a Q&A. They were going to go there, not scripted, and just have them ask questions and give them answers. And as they were leaving, they were standing just outside my door. Elder Hillier invited me to go to that meeting. And I said, no, you don't want me asking my questions there in front of the stake youth. You have no answers.
Yeah.
And so he said, well, you're probably right. And that's when they left.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you'd been any more of a vindictive kind of person, you'd have gone and just laid it out for them. Been like, he invited me. I'm here by invitation. I'm not a youth, but I've been told this is the place to ask questions.
Yeah. Well, back then I was not going by the name Holy Apostate.
No. No. They thrust that life upon you. So,
which I took up gladly.
Well, Elder Hillier tried to send you a letter, or did send you a letter. So he's trying to. Is that the actual letter?
This is the actual letter.
Wow. And it's just his testimony.
With his signature at the bottom there. So you can see that.
Wow, sell that. Get a tenner.
And I can read it. It's. Would you like me to? Just quickly.
You can give us a cliff notes.
It's this much. He just says it was a privilege. I thought about deeply our discussion. We know the Book of Mormon has this complex set of characters, complex geography, complex blah, blah, blah. The Book of Mormon was dictated by the prophet. I have, anyway. Each of us must ask ourselves if we could, in just one draft, dictate in a period of 90 days or less,
a Book
of power, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, which totally misrepresents the whole process. So he says, I testify that Joseph translated the Book of Mormon by the gift and power of God. This is a book, blah, blah, blah. I believe at one time you received this same witness that moved you to spiritually progress in the church and gospel. I invite you to come back. As you do, I promise you'll be a great blessing to many wonderful people, blah, blah, blah. And it just kind of goes on. And the rest of it is just really just
Yeah.
testimony. So,
Well, that was helpful. So you responded with your own letter, which was 9 pages of
yes,
rebuttal.
yes. Here's my letter, and as you can see, it is indeed
Oh,
much longer than his.
I'm sure you love that. What kind of topics did you cover?
Oh, all right.
Briefly.
My reading project, and the results of the reading project, and I mentioned that as Joseph Fielding Smith in Doctrines of Salvation said, Mormonism, as it is called, must stand or fall on the story of Joseph Smith. So, I'm not the one who made the false dichotomy or the false dilemma question.
No, they tied themselves
Joseph
in that
Fielding
knot.
Smith did.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of thing. I just went through all the things that stood out to me from my reading project that contradict what the teachings of the church actually were over the course of my life. And I included many references.
Yeah. No, fantastic. And if they can't answer, they don't deserve your 10%. So,
Well, neither, and I copied the stake president on that, and neither the stake president or Elder Hillier actually responded to me after that, except to be called in to more meetings with the stake president.
well, and that's how it went. But following your letter, there was radio silence. And you got to a point where more and more people were learning on the grapevine about your disaffection with the church. So, as any human, logically thinking human being would do, you'd think, what is the easiest way for me to let everyone know that this is the reason I'm not going to church, and you don't have to be afraid of me. You don't have to be wary of me. This is the reason, and don't worry about it. And there was a wonderful tool, a free tool that we all use called Facebook. So you went on in January of 2016, January 31st, and you wrote the post that goes down in history. And
It's the post that reiterated essentially what I put into those 9 pages of my response to Elder Hillier in a
yeah,
bit more condensed form.
so I'm just going to read the TLDR. Okay, so
Okay.
you did an amazing job because you gave them a TLDR at the beginning, too long, don't read, and then gave them the full length. So
I
TLDR.
learned that on Reddit.
Hey, I learned it there too. Someone said to me once, "Have you got a TLDR for something that I'd written?" And I just gave them a link to a website and didn't even know what they were asking for. So I've had a change of religious beliefs. Most of my immediate and many extended family members already know. Most Facebook friends don't. For me, this is a personal matter, but because of repeated questions and other reasons, I'm willing to share here. For those who couldn't care less, those who don't like reading such things, or for those for whom this just doesn't matter, feel free to skip reading. It's all important. It's an important matter ultimately only to me. And then you go on in your post, which was goes over a couple of pages, so it was a decent post. You go on, as you say, to speak about your reading project. And what you don't do is you don't actually list any specific problems, which I thought was good of you not to do, as a church would say, just throwing around hand grenades, But you said
Well,
some.
you're probably coming up to the point that I was going to make. I did mention one specific thing
You did,
that
and this
really got their attention.
this is the thing that got stuck in their throats. You said Joseph Smith. Okay, I will read this paragraph. This is the paragraph that got you excommunicated, and this is a paragraph that, yeah, had you just written this paragraph, it would have done the job. I'll now boil it down for all those who question what it was that cost me my faith. And then in bold, simply that Joseph Smith Jr. was a fraud, whether he was what some call a pious fraud, or well-meaning fraud, or a well-meaning fraud, or just someone who fully believed in what he preached. He was a fraud nonetheless. And then in bold capitals, provably so. And that, my friends, was the fat lady singing, because
And
clearly,
she nailed those notes, didn't she?
yeah, someone hit the red button, because 2 months later, 2 months. Now, what do you think the news cycle is on a Facebook post? I'm saying 12 hours before it disappears down the memory hole. And we all know what it's like when you see a post. Maybe it's less than 12 hours, maybe it's like 20 minutes. You see a post and you think, oh, that's interesting. You scroll past, and then you come back later. How far do you have to scroll to find the one thing that you saw earlier and you want to see again? So imagine the scrolling someone must have done for 2 months later for the bishop to call you in to discuss, as he quoted, church related matters. And the bishop told you, take it down. You said no. The state president called you in. He told you, take it down. You said no. By this time, the post is lost amongst roller skating dogs and, you know, cat. At that time, it was probably cats and cucumbers. So you told them no, and time's taking it down for you anyway. But they push on to a court of love. Now, if anyone wants to listen to this court of love, the link is in the description below. How did you record it? Is that? Oh, it's just a dictaphone.
It's just
Ooh.
a little audio recorder.
Oh, it's like a spy pen.
Yeah, I had it in my notebook. Well, my notebook is over here.
Okay, now everyone at this point, please take note of
I just had it sitting in the corner. There's a pin there now, so it won't close properly, but it was just sitting in there like this, switched on and closed, and was sitting in front of me the whole time.
Now, everyone take note of the tradecraft here and the tools, the spy tools that Bruce has got, because that's going to be that's going to be important a little bit later in this interview. But
well, the thing of it is Colorado is a single party state, meaning only one party needs to give permission to record a conversation.
okay.
And I'm the one giving permission, so nobody else needed to.
And you were in a new state to you.
Relatively new, yes.
Well,
We had moved from Dallas, Texas to Greeley, Colorado, where I am now, in 2014, just before I finished my reading project. I finished that here, started it in Texas, finished here. In the meantime, I had swapped jobs, moved to the company that I now work for, and so, you know, there were different transitions. So I've been here. I'm also a ham radio operator, and I had spoken to the stake president about having stake radio nets, so with ham operators in the stake. so we can do, some preparedness type nets, is what they would do, just to practice the procedures in case something came up. It's what I did in Texas and
Okay.
was very familiar with. I was part of the officers of the local ham radio club there, and so I got involved in that kind of thing a lot. So I had talked to the stake president. I don't think he really recognized me or remembered me, but I was the son-in-law of a prominent bishop. My father-in-law was a branch president for the University of Northern Colorado student branch, which grew enough that, I mean, here in this part of Northern Colorado, there's a high percentage of members. It grew enough there that they made it a ward, and he was the very first bishop of that university ward. He later, after that, became bishop of the ward we were in. I mean, we were in the same ward with my in-laws. So imagine the discomfort of going to church with all of this going on in the back. So then the ward was split, and my wife and I are now in a different ward than my in-laws. So anyway, the stake president really didn't know me, but I got a flavor of him. I mean, I made the suggestion to promote radio operators doing some preparedness type activities, and he just, no. So I kind of got the flavor of him. So in that regard, later on when I made that post on Facebook, I knew that my leadership roulette would run in my favor.
Yeah.
I knew.
Because I've listened to the audio of your court, and it's very
And doesn't he
clear.
come across very coldly and matter of factly?
Oh yeah, he was a right wanker. It was very clear that they just wanted to say the same thing. Take it down. Okay. So you explained to them pretty much everything you've already explained this evening. You explained to them your reading project, and then they say, okay, well, you're teaching false doctrine. At which point you said it's a Facebook post. How am I teaching false doctrine? There's no doctrine within it. Well, you say Joseph Smith is a fraud. Well, that's not doctrine. And I'm not teaching. It's just a Facebook post. Then they try and drill.
It's a conclusion that I arrived at.
Yeah. But then they try and drill you down on the audience you allowed the Facebook post to go to, because you obviously said, look, I was telling family and friends, this is my position. I was dispelling rumors.
Yeah, the family rumor mill got going, so I wanted to set things straight.
So why didn't you just make it to family? That's what they said. Why didn't you just make the post to family and friends? And why did it have
that
to
was
be
essentially
public?
all I had connections to on Facebook at the time.
That's what you
I mean,
think.
that was its whole purpose. I mean, I connected with family and friends, and most of my friends were in the church. So
they asked some dumb questions. One, obviously they were scratching around and coming up cold, because then they said, do you sustain the church leadership? I think you said something about to the point that they're honest. Yeah. As long as they're being honest, which most of the time they weren't. But it was kind of a kangaroo court, because it was just, are you going to delete it? And if you're not, you're going to be excommunicated. And that's what they did.
there was one old high priest in there in the high council room that asked me about the Journal of Discourses, because about that time the church had put out on their website that they were beginning, the feeling you got was that they were denigrating the status of the Journal of Discourses and distancing themselves a little bit. Yet you can still go back today and look at conference addresses where they make quotes from the Journal of Discourses. They can't have it both ways, but they do. Anyway, he tried to corner me on the Journal of Discourses, and I told him, well, it's like our collection of ensigns, the conference edition of the ensigns. It's all the talks of the leadership at the time, and they were taken down by this George Watts, who was an accomplished stenographer, and so, and the first presidency approved all of those. So, and if you read the introduction to, I think it's the third volume, you can see that they claim that it's scripture.
Wow. Scripture that they don't want us to read.
Yeah.
Almost like the stick of Bruce, as in Bruce R. McConkie, with his Mormon doctrine. Yeah. All of that stuff that they want to disappear down the memory hole. Okay.
Yep.
Now, when I was listening to the excommunication, it reminded me of one of your TikToks, which I'm going to bring up if I can. Bear with me. Okay. Technology, guys. It's not always a friend. Okay. So this TikTok, there's many that Bruce puts out there, but this one reminded me of Mormons, just classic Mormonism. Okay.
To be the end times right now, because they want to get to the rapture. They think it's the end times. They want it to be the end times because they want to speed it up, get to the rapture. Here's the twist. They've decided that they're going to be horrible people to speed up the end times to get to the rapture. Let's unpack it. First of all, not the end times, just terrible times. Try to help somebody. Second thing, the rapture. I don't know if you know anything about the rapture. They're not taking horrible people. Third thing you may not know about the rapture, not real. Not real. Literally a parable to get you to not be a horrible person.
I love that one.
That's one of my favorites, yeah.
Yeah. They're just so horrible to us sometimes, and you're like, do you realize that at this second coming, this rapture that you're all waiting for, horrible people aren't going to be the ones that that go with it?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Speaking of TikTok, though, and I make this disclaimer in several of my TikToks. I don't feel the pressure to be a prolific creator. I don't create them, once a week, once a day, 5 times a day, 10 times a day. I create them when I feel damn good and ready.
Yeah.
And so you'll notice that there aren't a lot of them there. I mean, you binge watched them pretty much in one afternoon.
I know. Don't tell my employer.
So there's not a lot there, but I make them when I feel like it. I'm not one of these creators that feels the impulse or the rush to be out there in the forefront creating marvelous TikTok. I mean, I'm not creating vignettes. I'm not creating stories. I'm not doing art. I'm not creating backgrounds. I'm not creating scripted stories. I'm not doing any of that crap. It's just me, and you take me or you leave me, and I couldn't care less.
Well, we'll take you. Now, for those that have been vigilant this evening, I found something on TikTok that I think is going to blow this case open. And I think Bruce has a double life. Bruce, I'm sorry if we are blowing your cover, but he is actually a spy for the CIA. And I found him on TikTok. Let me let's see what we've got here. Okay. Not her.
Now, this should be interesting. I don't know what it would be.
No? Okay. So this young lady is famous for asking a retired spy the questions we really want to know. Okay.
Yeah, I've seen her.
Because she's your granddaughter. Because here we have Bruce, the retired spy.
Asking retired spy the questions we really want to know, part 11. How
Come on, guys. Doppelganger.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Bruce, are you really a spy?
I cannot divulge that information at this time.
Yeah. Well, let's see what you had to say.
scared would normal civilians be if they knew what you knew?
Actually, I think they'd feel better.
He even talks like you, Bruce.
Oh dear.
What would it take for you to release classified information?
Wouldn't happen.
Did Russia interfere with the 2016 election?
Yes, and it's been proven.
Why won't Trump release his taxes?
That's pretty easy. There are plenty of things in there he doesn't want the world to know.
At what points while being a spy were you the most scared?
During the classified portions of my training.
How do you think World War III will begin?
Actually, I think it will begin with internal strife and civil war amongst more than one country.
Wow.
So
It was
the difference between him and me that distinguishes us is
Whoa.
that he has eyebrows. I do not have eyebrows.
You knew this was coming. Your spycraft told you it was coming. You shaved those
I
eyebrows
shaved
off.
them off.
You committed to the story. That's why you're a good spy.
That was fun.
Yeah, no.
He has a lot of common sense. I mean, he's solid common sense.
Yeah, yes, you do. Yeah, well done. So
Oh, thanks.
you'll be forever the retired spy.
Yeah.
But well, yeah. Sorry. So you're now wholly apostate. You're hoping to live to 102
Yeah.
just because.
Out of spite.
Yeah, out of spite. To get a letter from the Queen.
No, I just a long time ago I had a goal. I want to be 102, and the reason it's 102 and not 100 is I want to make darn good and sure that people realize that it is over 100. So I want to make sure that it's known that I've made it to 100, and then some.
Fantastic. And something that
And then I want to go in my sleep.
And then you want to go in your sleep.
The 6 passengers of the car that my grandpa drove when he went to sleep.
Oh dear.
That's an old joke, but then
Yeah.
so am I.
No, it's a good one. I want to die in my sleep like my grandpa. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
it's an old
not
joke.
the passengers.
I twisted that up terribly, but
It's okay. So one thing that we avoided, or not avoided, but just didn't come up. In your time, you spent some time in Chicago in the stake when Dallin H. Jokes was on the stake presidency.
Yes.
So, and he was a bit of a ball breaker even then.
Well, as a teenager, I respected the hell out of him. I mean, he was impressive. He was the second counselor in the stake presidency when we moved from Birmingham, Alabama, to a western suburb of Chicago, Illinois, into the Chicago South stake. The stake president was Lyle Reynolds Cahoon. First counselor was John Sonnenberg, and the second counselor was Dallin H. Oaks. And after President Cahoon was released, John Sonnenberg took the spot, became stake president. Dallin H. Oaks was the first counselor, and Donald Staley took the second counselor position. And every single one of those men were called as authorities to the church in one capacity or another. All of them except Dallin Oaks had callings in one of the quorums of 70. And so they were like 3 to 5 year callings, every single one of them. Dallin Oaks went from the stake presidency to president of Brigham Young University, and then later called as an apostle, of course. But we attended a couple of the receptions for a couple of their kids that got married. I went to a U.S. and Canadian Boy Scout encampment with his son Lloyd to Letchworth State Park in upstate New York in 1970. I know Dallin Oaks well, and my mother was the stake camp director, which was a responsibility that Dallin Oaks had in his stewardship, shall we say. So yes, we knew Dallin Oaks.
Awesome.
We know him well.
So if you were to, because obviously Dallin's watching now, if you had to give him a message,
Hey, buddy.
and a message to the church leadership from Holy Apostate as your parting blow for what has been a fantastic hour and 20 minutes, what would you tell the church leadership now, politely?
You know what's going on. You know what you know. Come clean.
That was really polite. Yeah, no, it's
Well, to do anything else is totally dishonest and manipulative and all the bad things that you can think of. It's narcissistic, it's elitist, all of these things that you could apply to them. And if they don't want to be that, if they don't want to fall into that role, come clean.
Bruce.
Be honest.
They are as honest as they know how to be.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, thank you, Ballard.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Thank you so much for being here with us this evening. I think we've had a good laugh as well as getting your story across, because I think it'd be pretty difficult now to get excommunicated for a single Facebook post just because there are so many of them. They wouldn't have any members left at all. So
yeah. Well, thank you for inviting me. That was a very pleasant surprise. I appreciate it.
No, it's great, and I'm hoping one day in the future we can have one of these podcasts where we get multiple guests on, and we can get some of the guests like yourself who've already been on back to just give us the good laughs and insight from where you are standing within Mormonism. So thank you. Thank you to Tom, who left a tip. Thank you to Wendy and her husband, who I know will be listening, and for their tip that they sent this week. It all goes back into the show so that we can you can see me in higher definition. I don't know if you've noticed, but your contributions helped to upgrade my camera equipment and the studio here. So thank you so much. You can now listen to the audio of this episode and all previous episodes on Apple Podcasts and Acast. Thank you to everyone in the chat. Thank you to Alana for being our bouncer in the chat and getting rid of that bot because it popped up 4 or 5 times, I know. But yeah, just amazing that everyone was here with us this evening. Next week, we have RFM. It won't be a live stream. We're pre-recording with RFM Friday, and it will be released Friday evening. And the week after that, we have Maven, who's been with us this evening. So we have some really good stuff coming up. And we even have a member of the First Presidency from the Community of Christ coming on with us in a few weeks
Awesome.
to get the lowdown. So yeah, we've got an action-packed February. I almost got the months wrong. February and into March, and I'm sure I keep the diary full 4 or 5 weeks ahead. So we'll keep them coming. Thanks everyone for watching, and we will catch you next time. Bye.
Thank you.